Welcome, Mary. I'm so glad to have you here and talk to you about the upcoming workshop in Croatia and your work and your life and your experience. And thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you for organizing it all. Yeah.
And maybe we can start with your experience. You are midwife for more than 50 years, yeah. But you're also prenatal and perinatal therapist and educator and craniosacral therapist and somatic experience practitioner and a facilitator of circle of security work, lots of things combining. And can you speak a little bit about your work, about how you integrate all those things in your work?
Yeah. So how I integrate it all. Well, doing the pre and perinatal psychology, somatic psychology work has really had the biggest impact on my life of all the trainings I've done. And when I was attending births before I took this training that Ray Castellino taught, there were places in birth where I would be triggered or have fear arise in certain situations. And for me, the biggest situation that would trigger me was shoulder dystocia, where the baby's head is out and the shoulders are in and they're stuck. And, there's no time to go anywhere. It's like you just have to deal with it. And as I worked with different midwives throughout the 50 years, I noticed that some midwives were totally fine with shoulder dystocia, but one partner was very nervous if a mother was bleeding more than normal. Another midwife was, activated if the baby needed to be resuscitated. And I was so curious, like, why is it that we have these different places of fear arise? And in the training, part of the training is to look at what happened at your own birth when I was being born. And what I discovered was that there was a nuchal cord around my neck, and it was tight. And right in that place where my head was out, my shoulders were still in, I lacked oxygen, and it was a scary place for me. So when I would sit with other families who were having a challenge in that same place in the sequence of birth where the baby's head was out, I would feel that fear arise, and I would, sort of not be totally present, and I would speed up the actions of what I was doing, and I would react rather than respond to what was really needed. And as I looked at why the other midwives had other places of fear arise, the one who was nervous about women bleeding, it turns out that she was born by C-section, and her mother had a hemorrhage and nearly died. And so that was a place of fear for her. And another partner had to be resuscitated as a baby. And so that was her place where she was super attentive and would be on the baby, changing the blankets and putting hats on and, really like tending to the baby in those first moments after birth. And so I realized that whatever happened to us in our early coming into this human form, that we recorded in our bodies, and there's a sensation through our senses that remember what happened to us. So even if there's not somebody around who can tell us what our birth story is, we have the story in our bodies. And so as we would attend births, these midwives, their body would remember what happened to them when they saw bleeding or when a baby needed to be resuscitated, there was a memory that would show up. And when we have implicit memories show up from what happened to us before we had words, when we were pre-verbal, we feel the sensations, and it feels as if it's happening now. And it feels big, and it can feel life-threatening. And so we can do to the babies that we're catching what it was that we needed to have done to ourselves, rather than really being present and seeing, okay, what do you need, little one? What can I do to support you to get out? And so after I did the first session around my own birth, the next birth was, of course, a shoulder dystocia. And my partner was catching the baby, and the head came out, and she worked for about 3 minutes to get the shoulders out, and they weren't coming. And she just looked at me and said, "You need to get in here and do this," because I had told her about this story about my birth. I said, "I know, I do." And for me, it was so different to move into that place of practitioner with a shoulder dystocia after having integrated what my own experience was with that. And so I sat down and grounded and related to the baby in a very different way, and just let the baby know, there's something stuck, and I just need to slide my fingers in along your back and feel where the stuckness is. And this anterior shoulder just needs to rotate forward. And I just did this light feather touch to the shoulder, and the baby just rotated 180 degrees. And I said, "Great, you're past your stuck place. You can get out now." And he gave a push. He came out, gave a squawk, and that was it. And I thought, oh, that's so simple. Can I just go back to the first baby I ever caught and relate to babies in this new way that I hadn't been doing before? Because I didn't realize that the babies are totally aware. Their consciousness is developed, and their bodies are immature. And after I did this training, the Castellino Foundation training, the outcome of my births were very different in the favorable direction. And things were much easier with the babies when there were challenges that arose. I could really talk to the baby and ask for their support to help themselves get born. And so it really changed how I was present. I wasn't so into the fear. I could just stay more present. And I related to the baby and the mother in a whole different way. And it just made life simpler, both in my personal life and my professional. Yeah. So let's see. Anything more to say about that? I think that's good.
I have to say that every time when I have opportunity to see you supporting mothers and babies being born, it's such a profound experience, seeing the recordings and seeing with how much awareness you are attending to them, and gentleness, and leading them and supporting them. It was always a profound experience for me, for my baby inside, to see that, to see how you support their awareness, their strength, their wisdom.
Yes.
And I can relate this to any part of the life, how we support each other, how we support partner, how we support child, how we support ourselves. And when we are speaking about pre and perinatal psychology, lots of people connected just with working with pregnant people, with families that are expecting babies, but it's such more than that.
Yeah.
And it's connected with how we relate to each other, how we do things, how we finish things, how we live our life. And Can you share a little bit about that, the broadness of pre and perinatal psychology, not just about supporting families, but also supporting adults, supporting children with lots of different challenges. How pre and perinatal psychology and all those knowledge help us in that.
Yeah. I think the, main purpose of this work is to support us to have a different perspective and relationship to our early history, to our pre-verbal history. The history is there and the history never changes. It doesn't go away. But what we can change is how we perceive what happened and our connection to whatever that was there. So as we work with people, usually whatever challenge they have in their today life is connected by a thread that goes all the way back to their early histories. And most of the time, babies aren't supported to integrate what happened to them when they were conceived, gestated, birthed, and that postpartum period, up to 2-3 years old. And so if we address what's happened to them, it can really support the integration if we do that soon after the birth, which can happen. And the closer to the event of trauma that occurred, that we address it, the easier the resolve. And if we wait a lifetime until, our 60s, 70s, 80s, it can still be resolved. It's never too late to heal wherever we are in our lives. But when we do it closer to the event of what left a big impact, the resolve is usually easier. So say, for example, if a baby is born with forceps, that's a big intervention that comes into the birth experience for that baby. And it happens toward the end of the birth, right before the baby's coming out. And so how that can impact us later in life and what happens at birth can affect us throughout our lifetime, our sequencing, how we perceive safety or we don't perceive safety, how we come into relationship with ourselves and others. So many things are affected by what happens at birth. Birth really matters. And also, birth is never a perfect thing. It can always, have something in it where there was an interruption of some sort. And so, if we work to integrate and realize what it is that happened and bring it to our consciousness, it supports the integration of that. And there's a way to do it where, if a woman who's just birthed a baby who was born with forceps, for example, if she tells the story and we support her to slow down the rhythm of how fast she's speaking, it allows her to integrate it more while she's going through it. And the baby, if the baby's there also, it supports the baby's integration of it too. And the baby will often, squawk a bit when they're talking about, mother's talking about what happened, or father's talking, or mother's partner is talking about what happened at birth. Babies will often have a reaction to the part that they want to speak about and tell us about. And so we can pause and give the baby a turn and let them tell us or show us what happened. They'll often move their bodies in a way that shows us something around the birth. Or their verbal sounds will express it. And so, say there's an adult who never realized that their birth, that they experienced with forceps had a huge impact. What might show up for them in their later life is that they can go through different sequences of starting a project, going on a journey, having a relationship, writing a paper, doing a project, and right toward the end of the project, they get stuck. Just as right at the end of the birth, they got stuck. And so they don't realize that the imprint from birth is arising because they're coming to the end of something. And so for the person born with forceps, as an adult, they might have, a desk with stacks of papers and unfinished projects that they get all the way close to the end, but they just can't complete it.
Without help.
Without help, yeah. Without support. And, when there's an intervention, what's missed often is the practitioner doesn't often talk to the baby about what's coming. There's no preparation. Often we'll talk to the parents and say, okay, baby's stuck. We need to use the forceps to pull the baby out. And nobody's letting the baby know what's coming toward them. So the preparation is missed for that kind of support. And it could be life-saving for them to be born with the forceps. And so by talking to the baby and letting them know what's coming helps them get ready for the experience. And then, okay, here come the forceps and we're putting them on your head now. There's the one and there's the other. And now we're going to, with the next contraction, your mom's going to push and you're going to push with your legs and we're going to just help ease you out. And the practitioner, if they can stay in relationship to the baby, that also supports them in that experience. And then once they're out, to be with the baby in the after the birth and support them just to show us how they're doing. They may need to cry. They might have a headache. They might, want contact, with our hands on their hands or feet. Different ways that we can be in connection with them. And so as an adult, that baby who is born with forceps, who gets stuck at the end of a project, may need what was missed at the birth if those support layers weren't there. So connection, when they get stuck, they can ask for support from someone who loves them and knows how to support them. They might need to slow things down so they can get their thoughts collected about what they need to do next. Because when forceps are being used, often it's, pretty quick that the baby will go from the inside to the outside. So the rhythm is speeded up. So maybe they need just to slow down to finish that project. Maybe they need more time to figure things out in their own way. Like with forceps from the outside, somebody thinks, oh, baby needs support, so we're going to do this. And when an adult is working through their imprint, they might feel that, I just need to go slower. I feel a lot of pressure to get this done, and I need to have more space and just slow down and give myself permission to take that. And then that could help them get through it as well. So when we add what was missed at the beginning, it can help us integrate what that was and to do our sequence in a different way toward the end.
So what you are saying is that the whole sequence of being born and even before is something that really influences us and stays in us and continues being there in life until we integrate it. First recognize it and then integrate it.
What happens to us when we're being born has a big impact, and we do carry it throughout our lives until it's addressed, until it's brought to consciousness. And once that happens, that experience and that history is still there, but how we relate to it is very different. And it opens up more choice so that we can do things in a different way rather than reacting in a survival mode, which we developed back then, that we can look at today's situation, be present with it, and see what's needed today rather than going from the automatic reaction. Yeah.
And knowing how many cesarean sections there are today and birth with Pitocin and other interventions. There are lots of stories that we carry.
Yes. Yes, so many stories.
And you said once, it sticked with me, that you trust birth in your bones. I remember that sentence.
I do. Yeah.
And there's so much fear and so much trauma around the birth nowadays.
Yes.
And how we can change that narrative? What do you think need to do as society, as community, as people who are helping and supporting families?
Yeah. So I think one way to support people who are birthing is to, well, first of all, there's the cultural influence where when people get pregnant, often they, depends on what culture you've grown up in and where you're living. But a lot of times it's, pregnant, find an obstetrician, go to the hospital, have your baby. And there's no awareness that there's other options.
Yeah.
Like you might want to check out a birth center or maybe a home birth with a midwife. And there are different choices we have, but culturally, there's a big influence on how women make their choices around how they're going to birth. And also in most cultures third world cultures still are exposed to birth and death in their everyday life. It's an experience that they're more likely to see than, in a more modern world. Often we don't see or hear the sounds of birth or see death until we're going through it ourselves. And so there's a big unknown about what it is. And that can in itself create fear because we just aren't exposed to it. It's institutionalized and done in the hospitals often. And, some places it's coming back to home, which is wonderful with hospice care and death doulas and doulas for birth. There's more support around both birth and death. So that's great. Then another thing I think that has a big influence is that whatever our birth experience was is still with us. And in most of the world, we're not supported to integrate what that was. And so we carry the memory of our birth in our bodies through our implicit memory. And when we are giving birth ourselves, the sensations of the contractions or the pressure of the baby's presenting part moving down into the birth canal, even our own sounds in labor can trigger the memory of what we experienced going through our birth with our mothers. And if there was, a challenge in that journey, it can trigger the memory of what happened. And it can bring up fear or tension or constriction, different sensations. And we're not aware that it's coming from a past experience. It feels as if it's happening right now, even though everything in the birth looks fine to the external, like caregivers. To the woman and the baby, it might feel very scary. And so one of the things that can help to reduce the fear level is for parents to work to integrate their own birth experiences, to work with a practitioner who has the pre and perinatal somatic psychology experience and can support them to integrate whatever happened to them when they were being born and differentiate what happened to them from what's happening to them in labor with their baby that they're birthing. And so when there's a separation between those two experiences, it gives more freedom to be with what's happening right now. And so that can be a really great thing to do to prepare families for birth, support them to integrate not only what happened when they were being born themselves, but also if they've had a number of children, to integrate the previous birthing experiences so that they can differentiate between, maybe the first one was a C-section, emergency C-section for some reason, to differentiate that from what they're planning for their fourth baby, where they want to have a natural birth and, do it in a different way. So it can really be supportive just to look at what's there in all the layers of birth, what you hear in the culture, what you see on TV or in the movies, those images, what happened to you at your own birth, what happened when you gave birth to your first, to your second, to however many were there, and create space between each experience so that it's not just all glommed into a big mountain of birth. Oh no, it starts to open up and there's space for everything to land. And there's so much health in the journey of birth. Like the mother's body so knows how to give birth, and the baby's body so knows how to be born. And for thousands of years, mothers and babies and partners have been doing that and surviving. And so if we just get in touch with that inner knowing and really listen to the inside, it can guide us through the birth experience in a whole different way than if we're relying on only the outside information, people telling us what to do or how it should be or what the outcome should be. We really listen inwardly. Yeah. Let's see what else could make it less fearful. Well, we are our own best teachers. And as we gather skills, if it's like craniosacral therapy, SE, we learn settling exercises, and we learn how to self-regulate and co-regulate with others. There's a lot of tools that we can use in support of people who are birthing and in ourselves when we're birthing. And so the more we can hone in and fine-tune our skills, it allows us to be more present and to be in the moment with what is actually happening now. Yeah.
I just wanted to mention that from my experience, this work changed my parenting so much. It's so much more than birth, and also changing my partnership and how I see myself. It has a big influence. And,
Yes.
and maybe I would like to ask you, how do you feel that this work can help parents after the birth?
Yeah. I think it helps them tremendously. I think that when families do this work after the birth, there's less postpartum depression. There's more layers of support. There's a better way to integrate, like there's a deeper integration that happens so that they're not left with all the wonder, the worry, the impact of what happened to them and their baby. And so many times, I think when a woman, like for example, has a cesarean, that a lot of times after some time has passed, people on the outside are like wanting her to get on with life and let go of the grief or the upset or concern she has about what happened or how the baby was born or what impact that may have had on the baby. And really what she needs is for someone to like be with her in the pain of that and the grief of that loss. If she was really hoping to have a vaginal birth, for example, and had to have a cesarean for some life-saving reason or some reason that was more out of need for a practitioner rather than the need of what the birth situation held. To have someone just really sit with her, listen to her, support her, help her understand what happened and why the steps happened, and clarify things with her, and do it at a pace that supports the integration, can help a family feel so different about their birth. And each person in the family needs to share their own perspective and experience of what it was that happen, including the baby. So mother, father, or mother and partner, if there's any siblings that were present at the birth, and the baby, they all need, their story needs to be heard. Their perspective needs to be heard. Yeah.
And as you said before, it's never too late to support our kids in a way that maybe they didn't get during the birth or even before. If something was missing
Yes.
back then,
Yes.
we can give them the same afterwards.
Yes.
Whenever we realize that they missed that.
Yeah, whenever it was missed at our own births or us giving births, our children's births, we can give it to them sometime after the experience and help them repair what was missed. Yeah.
Great. And we are so excited that you are coming to Croatia.
I'm so excited to go there. I have not ever been really in Croatia, so I'm so looking forward to it. Yeah.
And how do you feel in this part of Europe? How do you feel about the workshop?
I'm so excited about it. I've been coming to Europe for 15 years or so to teach and do trainings and workshops, but I've not done it in Croatia yet. So I'm very excited to go there because I've seen pictures of how beautiful it is and the colors of the water, and knowing you and your partner, it's just been such a pleasure, and I've loved the people that I've met from Croatia. So I'm really excited to be there with you both and whoever's going to come.
And besides the 2-day workshop that we have also a special workshop for midwives.
Yes.
And I'm really excited about that.
Yes.
To connect you with them.
Me too.
And what would you like to bring them, knowing the situation, the lack of support usually they have? How do you see that workshop?
Well, when I went through the training myself, 23, 4 years ago, I was so excited about it, how much it changed me as a practitioner at birth, and also how it changed me in my family and how our family dynamics were. And one of my intentions that I came up with was that I wanted all the midwives in any training program to learn about this work. And it just made the work so much simpler for me. And the outcomes were much more favorable. Like it shortened the labors. Because what I did was the families who I was working with in my practice started doing the work, and they would have sessions and integrate their birth and get really clear on their intentions of what they wanted for their own birth for their children and support them through the whole journey. So the transfer rate from home to hospital, once a woman was in labor, decreased from 20% down to 6%. And that was amazing for me. And so, for the families to be able to do the work is one really big goal that I had. And I ended up just bringing it to the world, to 10 different countries, and not just the midwives, but to everybody. And for the midwives specifically, I think that the most missed part of the sequencing in our lives is the integration of experiences, because the world has speeded up so much, where we just go from one activity to the next, to the next, to the next, and there's no stop or pause where we just go, wow, that was big, or I am really exhausted from that experience, I need to take a nap. We just go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing till we have to stop. And in birth, when we attend births, and especially if we have a busy practice, we go from one birth to the next, to the next, to the next. And do we really allow the space to integrate what happened at that birth? And if we don't, we end up, having feelings in our bodies that will carry into the next labor and birth. And so if there's somebody who, say, had a hemorrhage, the next birth, we're going to maybe really constrict our boundaries around bleeding and be a little nervous about it and like jump in there maybe sooner or try to get the placenta out faster or, whatever that last situation held and that's left over in our bodies, we'll, have constriction around that at the next birth. And what I did with 3 of my apprentices that I was working with and, doing this work in combination with midwifery was we would talk about every birth after the fact. And we would drive to the birth together, drive home, and we'd have a discussion about what happened, what was left over from our own experience, how something may have touched our own birth history, and really work to integrate the different places that had been activated or triggered. And it so supported how we appeared to the next birth. Because as we go through experiences, it shows us where we need to tighten up our boundaries or relax them. And each experience teaches a new way to be. So when we integrate it, we can really use it in a healthy way instead of a fearful way. Yeah, so that's one of the things. And the other thing is to bring more awareness to the midwives about the consciousness of babies, like how conscious they are, and that we can really relate to them and we can help them know what to do to get born, and they can help us to get themselves born. We don't have to just do it to them. That they're active participants. They fully participate in the birth by pushing with their legs and feet and, scrunching their shoulders and burrowing with their head, and they're working to find the path of least resistance. So many things to share with the midwives. Yeah.
Looking forward. Thank you, Mary, for
You're
this
welcome.
Conversation, and
Yes.
see you in Croatia.
Yes, soon. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.